Hi, I'm Sarah. Before we jump into the story, do me a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for this. I'm 28, happily married to the love of my life, Mark, and we're eagerly awaiting our first baby. Life's been pretty amazing so far. We've got this charming little house in the suburbs, stable jobs, and now we're diving into all things baby. Decorating the nursery, shopping for adorable clothes, you name it. My mother-in-law, Karen, seemed great at first. She dropped by with casseroles and offered to help with the nursery, but there was something a bit off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but her smile always seemed a bit forced when she looked at me. "Oh, Sarah, sweetheart, let me take care of that," Karen would say, swooping in to grab the paint roller from my hand. "We wouldn't want you to overexert yourself, now would we?" I'd force a smile and respond, "Thanks, Karen. I'm pregnant, not helpless, but I appreciate it." Her laugh, a high-pitched cackle, always grated on my nerves. "Oh, you're so amusing, dear. Mark, don't you think she's just hilarious?" Mark, seemingly unaware of the underlying tension, would shrug. "Mom's just trying to help, babe." As time went on, Karen became a constant presence in our home. She'd show up unannounced, rearrange our furniture, and offer unsolicited critiques on my cooking. "Oh, is that how you're preparing the pasta? Well, I guess that's one method," Karen commented with a hint of condescension. I tried to bring it up with Mark, but he dismissed my concerns. "She's just excited about the baby, Sarah. Give her a break." But things started to take a strange turn. I'd find my prenatal vitamins rearranged on different shelves, and my hospital bag would be unpacked and repacked. One time, I could have sworn I saw Karen going through my phone while I was napping. "Karen, have you been moving my things?" I asked, struggling to stay calm. She blinked with feigned innocence. "Me? Oh, no, dear. Must be pregnancy brain. It'll clear up soon." I wanted to scream, but instead, I forced a nod and retreated to the bedroom. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just hormones, but deep down, I sensed something was off. Then it happened. I woke in the middle of the night, a sharp pain slicing through my belly. "Mark, it's time." Everything went hazy. Mark frantically searching for the car keys, me trying to breathe through the contractions, and somehow Karen was there too, fussing over my hospital bag. "Don't worry, dear," she said as we hurried to the car. "I'll handle everything." We stormed into the hospital like a whirlwind, me struggling to breathe, Mark looking like he might faint, and Karen flitting around like an uncatchable mosquito. "I need a room, now," I shouted, gripping the reception desk. "This baby's on the way." The nurses swiftly escorted me to the delivery room, with Mark and Karen trailing close behind. Just as I was getting settled, a nurse named Jessica walked in. She had a soothing presence that immediately put me at ease. "Hi, Sarah. I'm Jessica, and I'll be looking after you today. Let's get you as comfortable as we can, okay?" I nodded, grateful for Jessica's calming presence. But then Karen jumped in. "Oh, I used to be a nurse years ago. Maybe I can help out." Jessica glanced at Karen with a hint of skepticism but remained polite. "That's very kind of you, ma'am, but we've got it all under control." Karen persisted. "Oh, but I insist. Sarah's like a daughter to me." I wanted to shout, "No, she's not," but another contraction hit, leaving me with nothing but a groan. Hours dragged on, and the pain intensified. Mark was doing his best, but he looked pale and queasy. "You're doing great, honey," he said, his voice trembling. "Shut up, Mark," I snapped. "This is your fault." Karen floated over with a syrupy sweet tone. Now, dear, don't be too hard on Mark. Let me adjust your pillow for you." As she leaned in, the scent of her perfume made me feel suddenly nauseous. "Karen, could you please give me a bit of space?" She looked wounded, but Jessica stepped in. "Let's give Sarah some room. Mark, why don't you fetch some ice chips?" As Mark left, Jessica took my vitals. "How are you holding up, Sarah?" "Like I'm being torn apart," I groaned. "Is this supposed to be normal?" Jessica gently patted my hand. "Every labor is unique, but you're doing really well. I'll be back in a few minutes to check on you, okay?" As soon as Jessica left, Karen was back at my side. "Oh, sweetheart, you look so thirsty. Let me adjust your IV." I was too drained to protest. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them, Karen was fiddling with something near my bed. "What are you doing?" I slurred, feeling uneasy. "Just making sure you're comfortable, dear," Karen said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. My head started spinning, and the room began to blur. Something was terribly wrong. I tried to call out, but my tongue felt leaden in my mouth. "Mark," I barely managed to whisper. Karen's face loomed over me, her eyes chillingly indifferent. Shadir, just relax. Panic surged as I realized I couldn't move. The monitor began to beep wildly. Where was everyone? Where was Jessica? Just then, Jessica burst into the room, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. What's going on here? Karen stepped back, feigning innocence. I don't know what happened. She just started acting oddly. Jessica quickly moved to my side, checking the monitors. Sarah, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. I tried with everything I had, but I couldn't move. The last thing I heard was Jessica shouting, Code Blue, we need a crash cart in here now. Then everything went dark. What about my baby? That was my final thought before I lost consciousness, feeling betrayed by the one person who should have been there to protect me. I came to feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The room was spinning, and though I could hear voices, they sounded distant. I tried to open my eyes, but they felt as if they were glued shut. She's coming around. Sarah, can you hear me? Jessica's voice reached me through the haze. I managed to croak out a faint, yes. Thank God, I heard Mark say, his voice trembling. Sarah, you scared us half to death. With great effort, I finally managed to open my eyes. The room was filled with people. Mark, looking like he'd aged 10 years, Jessica checking my vitals, and a couple of unfamiliar doctors. In the corner, Karen stood, looking uncomfortably nervous. What happened? I mumbled. Jessica leaned in, her expression serious. You had a severe reaction to something in your system. We had to perform an emergency C-section. My heart raced. The baby? She's fine, Mark said quickly. She's in the NICU, but she's perfect. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She? Mark nodded, tears welling in his eyes. We have a daughter, Sarah. I wanted to feel elated, but a nagging concern lingered. But what about me? Jessica exchanged a glance with one of the doctors. We're still investigating. Your blood work revealed dangerously high levels of medication that shouldn't have been in your system. Suddenly, everything came rushing back. Karen by my bedside, adjusting my IV, the strange sensation I felt. I turned to Karen, who was now edging towards the door. It was you, I said, my voice firmer. You tampered with my IV? The room fell into stunned silence. Mark stared at his mother in disbelief. Mom? Karen put on a facade of innocence. I don't know what you're talking about, dear. You must be disoriented from the medication. But Jessica wasn't convinced. Actually, I saw you near Sarah's IV just before she collapsed. Care to explain that? Karen's expression grew cold. I was trying to help. You weren't doing your jobs properly by administering unauthorized medication. Jessica responded sharply. That's not help. That's attempted murder. Mark looked pale, as if he might vomit. Mom, tell me this isn't true. Karen's mask of innocence shattered. She was going to take you away from me, Mark. This woman was going to ruin everything. Security, Jessica called out urgently. We need security in here immediately. As if on cue, two burly security guards burst into the room. Karen tried to escape, but they caught her just outside the door. Her screams echoed down the hall. You ungrateful brats. I was only trying to protect our family. I slumped back in the bed, utterly drained. Mark took my hand, his face a mix of shock and regret. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Save it, I said, my voice weary rather than angry. We'll sort that out later. I want to see our daughter. Jessica nodded. I'll arrange for her to be brought up from the NICU. But first, the police are here and will need your statement. As if on cue, two detectives entered the room, notepads in hand. Mrs. Johnson, I'm Detective Rivera, and this is my partner, Detective Chen. We'd like to ask you a few questions about what happened. I nodded, bracing myself. Go ahead. Detective Rivera cleared his throat. Can you walk us through what you remembered just before you lost consciousness? I detailed everything, Karen's odd behavior, her insistence on helping, and the moment I saw her tampering with my IV. Jessica added her observations, noting the suspicious timing of Karen's presence near my bed. Detective Chen scribbled notes rapidly. We'll need to review the security footage, Detective Rivera said. If what you're describing is accurate, Mrs. Johnson, your mother-in-law could face serious charges. Mark's voice trembled. I can't believe this, my own mother. I squeezed his hand reassuringly. We'll get through this, Mark, together. Just then, a nurse walked in, pushing a small plastic bassinet. Someone's here to meet her mommy. she said with a warm smile as she placed my daughter in my arms. All the pain and fear of the past few hours seemed to vanish. She was perfect, tiny fingers, a button nose, and a tuft of dark hair just like Mark's. "Hi, little one," I whispered softly. "I'm your mommy, and I promise I'll always protect you." The next few days in the hospital were a whirlwind of feedings, diaper changes, and a steady stream of doctors, nurses, and officers. Hope was a trooper through it all, sleeping peacefully while Mark and I tried to make sense of everything. "How are you holding up, champ?" Jessica asked, popping in during her rounds. I managed a weak smile. "Better, thanks to you. I don't know how to repay you for saving our lives." She waved it off. "Just doing my job. But I wouldn't mind being Hope's honorary Aunt D." "Deal?" I laughed, then grew serious. "Any news on, Jessica nodded somberly. "Karen's been formally charged. They found a stash of medication in her purse that matches what was in your system. Things aren't looking good for her." I could feel Mark stiffen beside me. He'd been silent since the incident, caught between relief that Hope and I were safe and guilt over his mother's actions. "Babe, talk to me," I said, squeezing his hand. He sighed deeply. I can't believe she would do this. My own mother. I keep hoping there's some explanation." There isn't," I said firmly. "She tried to kill me and our baby Mark. There's no coming back from that." He nodded, his expression resolute. "Right. I've decided to cut all ties with her. No visits, no calls, nothing." "You sure?" I asked, surprised by his determination. "Damn straight," he replied. "You and Hope are my family now. That's all that matters." Just then, Detective Rivera walked in. "Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, sorry to interrupt. We have an update on the case." We listened as he explained. The security footage was incriminating, clearly showing Karen tampering with my IV. They also discovered a journal in her home filled with rants about me, accusing me of stealing her son, and detailing plans to fix the situation. "Jesus," Mark muttered, looking pale. "Attempted murder, among other charges. With the evidence we have, she'll likely be facing a lengthy prison sentence," Rivera continued. I nodded, a mix of relief and sadness washing over me. "Thank you, Detective." After Detective Rivera left, Jessica returned with some papers. "Good news, you're cleared for discharge. Ready to take this little munchkin home." As we packed up, the hospital administrator stopped by. "Mrs. Johnson, on behalf of the hospital, I want to apologize for what happened. We're implementing new security measures to ensure nothing like this ever happens again." I appreciated the gesture, but my main focus was on getting out of there. Finally, we arrived home. As I gently placed Hope in her crib, Mark wrapped his arms around me from behind. "We made it," he whispered. I leaned back into him. "Yeah, we did." We stood there for a while, just watching our daughter sleep. It was serene, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. "Mark," I said softly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." He turned to face me, his expression serious. "Anything." I took a deep breath. Did you have any idea what your mom was capable of?" His face fell. "Sarah, I swear, if I had even the slightest hint, I would have kept her far away from us. I was completely blind, and I'm so sorry for that." I searched his eyes and saw only honesty and regret. "Okay," I nodded. "I believe you." He pulled me close, his voice soft but full of conviction. "I love you, Sarah. You and Hope are my everything. We're going to get through this." "Yeah," I said, feeling a new strength rising within me. "We're going to be more than okay." "So, here's a question for you. If you were in Mark's shoes, could you ever forgive your mother for something as unforgivable as trying to harm your wife and unborn child? Or would you cut ties completely like he did? It's a tough one, isn't it? Family betrayal like this doesn't come with easy answers. If this story had you hooked, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of life. Your support helps us keep bringing you content that resonates. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.